Here's your smart fact of the day.
Did you know that only 8% of people who actually set up any kind of goal for themselves, whether it's health, wealth, relationships, anything, succeed in what they're trying to do? 92% of all of us fail. And as somebody who has failed so many different times in setting goals and trying to achieve them, I thought I'm going to take a different sort of approach towards setting goals and perhaps share my learnings with you on this episode of Smarter With Sid. So let's go. Let's first understand some context over here. It's towards the end of November, and most people try to set goals for January. It's the beginning of a new year, and it's something that all of us look forward to because there is a very well-known saying or very well-known understood fact that most of us like meaning in our lives. So even though Jan 1 is a very arbitrary date for setting any goal, just because we herald it as the start of a new year, we look at it seriously. And therefore, all resolutions or goals actually end up being thought through maybe in the month of December or maybe even in November. And I think that there has been a slew of videos that I've seen on YouTube. Experts or people who are motivational talkers are, just giving a lot of their gyan, their knowledge on, how to set goals and achieve them and how to set realistic goals and the rest of it. Now, I don't want to add to the clutter. The context is so that I set it absolutely right. I think that there are limitations for goal settings. So this episode is about how not to set goals, or rather, why you should not set goals. Is there some other way? Let's try to figure this one out. But I just wanted to figure the context of what, this particular episode is. It's a little contrarian to the rest of the gang, which is like rah rah and all of that. Now, all of us know that it is extremely difficult to set goals. And this is my personal experience of why it is so difficult. I think we are very poor predictors of how the future is going to be, which essentially means that we are going in an unknown landscape of things that may, be curveballs, be things that we have not really anticipated or, envisaged or whatever it is. And the fact is that those factors come and bite us in the ass, and we are not really ready for them. So we might be very determined, but that is based upon the template of the present moment. And so therefore, the first thing that I would urge all of you to do is to figure out how fluid is your life. Is it going to have a lot of transition, or is this going to be steady state for the next year? And if you can't really have a very specific answer towards it, I would suggest spend a little time in understanding or trying to figure out how the context is going to be. Like, for example, if I'm going to spend more time in the UK in the next year, which I am going to, then I better understand that there might be a lot of factors that I have not considered, thinking about when it comes to looking towards planning or setting goals for myself. If I plan it from my current state of affairs, doing what my current job is, it's not going to work. So that's the first thing I would urge you to do. When not to set a goal, when you have not done a good landscape analysis, right? The second is, I think, even more subtle. I think a lot of us actually visualize very badly. And if you are trying to set a goal just as a abstract, vague notion of how you want to be, please understand that that is probably a wish, which is good to have, an intention if you want to go all woo-woo about it. But converting that into a goal will become very difficult if you're not able to visualize well enough. And when you're visualizing, it is not only about what you have achieved, but also who you are as a person. Like, for example, if you're quitting smoking, it's not enough to only view the landscape around you wherein people are congratulating you about leaving smoking and the rest of it. It's about how you feel. And very few of us actually have the ability to visualize both the external and the internal. I personally have struggled with visualization a lot. I have made an episode on how to visualize well. I think I'm getting better at it. But frankly, unless and until you can visualize your end state, not just from an external perspective, but also from an internal perspective, I don't think we should set goals. And for example, this leads me to my third point. A lot of us actually should be taking an internal check and try to figure out, okay, so what makes more sense? Does it make more sense for me to have a 12-month goal? Or does it make more sense for me to have a shorter term goal or a mid-term goal? So let's say 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And that totally depends upon how well you can visualize your end state. Now, that is a combination of points 1 and 2. Point 1 was how well do you understand how your future landscape is going to be, and 2, how well you can visualize yourself and the changed stuff around you in that future landscape, right? So it's quite good for you to have a goal which there is no compulsion. Who's told you to have a 12-month goal, right? Who's told you to have a long-term goal? Don't do that if you don't have a vision. If you have a vision, please feel free to change your goal as soon as you have a vision, and it might be Feb 1. Who cares? And that is the whole thing. This is supposed to serve us rather than, us being slave to that goal. So therefore, I think it is extremely important for us to kind of differentiate between long-term intentions, wishes, and all the rest of it with goals that we are trying to achieve. Now, when we put it like that, then it becomes extremely critical for us to see it, from as scientific way as possible. Now, if I have to look at what Andrew Huberman has said about goals, it's very interesting. He says, don't do goals which are too easy or too hard. Now, therefore, you might have one big, hairy, audacious goal. That's what some of the motivational experts say. But unless and until you have the ability to actually achieve it, you're not going to stay motivated long enough. Moderate goals actually help you achieve it. Your bodies get set. Do see Huberman's podcast on setting goals, because I don't think that I have anything more to add to that. I think the only takeaway for me is to make sure that, your goals are aligned with your body. This is not just your mind, but also with your body, right? And it might be a mental goal, but still your body needs to follow suit, right? So moderate goals is another thing. Now, here's the end thing. Okay, so maybe you are able to predict, maybe you're able to visualize yourself, maybe you're able to have a goal. It might be a longer term goal, maybe 12 months or whatever. And maybe it might be moderate as well. But it might be a situation wherein you still don't achieve things if you don't perhaps break it down into milestones. Now, this becomes very boring for us to do, because the goal setting is easy. All of us as children, maybe we've spent so much time in creating elaborate timetables of how we are going to achieve things. But actually, when it comes to following that timetable, it becomes difficult. So when you try to break down a goal into milestones, like, okay, what am I going to achieve this month, this week, this day? A lot of us fall short. And that's when you become you're on the slippery slope, right? And it doesn't really work. So therefore, breaking it down into milestones probably is going to help even your moderate goals. And here's my final piece of advice of setting goals, or when not to set a goal. Please have a plan B. Let's assume that, your goal, you're not reaching with a particular method you have in mind. If it doesn't work, what are you going to do? What's your secondary goal? Is it worth it? And don't have too many of those, because I think enough has been said about having too many goals. And I think that there is something there, because if you have too many goals, you're not going to have the energy to achieve it. Maybe 1 or 2, and if you're lucky, 3, right? But make sure that you have the ability to consider when not to set a goal, set everything else up first, and then maybe try to achieve things. It could work well. I'm going to post how I'm doing with my goals based upon all this stuff. And I'm putting in all the hard work in November and December in order to maybe understand whether I should be having goals at all. And if so, what should they be like? I hope you like this episode of mine. Many more to come from where this one came from. And hey, if you like me, I'm the Traveling Professor. Do follow me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. And if you like this podcast, do like and subscribe to this YouTube channel or this podcast, whichever way you're consuming it. And if you like stuff like this, IVM's got a lot of stuff for you. Do take a look at, the wonderful stuff that awaits you on that happy note.